Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Second Time Around, the Kitchen Spoons and Combat Boots multimedia educational series. I'm Candace Bryan Bro, the Senior Family Readiness Support Assistant for the Vermont Army National Guard. And with me today is...
Hi, everybody. This is Marcy Caulfield, your State Military One-Source Consultant.
Before we begin, I'm going to read our disclaimer for the information being presented. The resources provided on Second Time Around does not constitute endorsement by the Department of the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, Vermont National Guard, or Vermont Military Family Programs of the organization's products and/or services contained therein. Further, Vermont Military Family Programs assumes no responsibility for consequences resulted from the use of the products or services provided by the organizations or resources listed. Vermont Military Family Programs makes every effort to present our clients with reputable resources. We cannot guarantee the validity of said resources, and use of such resources is voluntary. So each month, we feature a different topic. And if anyone listening has suggestions for future topics, please feel free to reach out to one of us via email. Our contact information can be found on the corresponding slide deck. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us on Second Time Around. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and start our presentation. Influence on the home front starts with you. And our guest speaker today is Jade Phillips. Say hi, Jade.
Hi.
Go ahead, Jade. Take it away.
All right. So I'm coming to talk to you today about, just some general information on self-care. And some of the aspects I want to cover are like emotions and stress thresholds and understanding the levels of self-care. And we'll get into that in a little bit more depth. So on the first slide, understanding the need. Stress and emotions, what are they and what can they do? Stress thresholds, planning and implementation. Understanding the levels of self-care, respectful ways to disengage. Developing a plan for self-care. And helping to promote a climate of help-seeking. 4 parts of self. There are 4 parts to an individual's identity of self. The first is the most obvious, physical. That's how you are physically made up. Your body, your health, your structure, your build, etc., etc. Okay. Then there's the mental aspect. The mental aspect encompasses our psyche, ego, and the way that we see ourselves. So think of yourself as looking in the mirror in the morning. What do you see? And who do you see in that reflection looking back at you? The third part is emotional. And emotional encompasses not only our feelings, but also our thoughts of self, our strengths, our weaknesses, our biases, those that we hold dear to our hearts that we learned when we were younger, and those that we, are unaware of, that we just use on a daily basis, with or without being cognizant of them. And the last would be spiritual. And now I want to be clear on this one. I'm not talking about the religion that you practice or the church that you belong to. I am talking about your personal relationship with the world around you that also encompasses your faith and beliefs and core values, but also just the way you interact with nature. So in order to begin this talk, we need to clearly define what we're talking about. So we're talking about stress, but there's different types of stress. The definition of stress by the Webster's Dictionary is that stress is a state of mental tension and worry caused by problems in your life, work, etc. Something that causes a strong feeling of worry or anxiety, a physical force or pressure. Burnout. Burnout is a state of stress that is attacking more than one aspect of self. That's why we went over that slide of what defines self, because burnout is achieved when you are being attacked emotionally, spiritually, physically, or mentally. And these attacks usually couple. So if you have emotional distress, chances are you have a physiological response to that emotional distress, and you also have an emotional response to that distress. And it starts to affect your ability to work productively and to cope with life on a more normal basis. And what I mean by normal is your usual. Okay, I'm not talking about the general association of normal. I'm talking about what's normal for you. Okay, this is individual. But when you get to burnout, that usually means that 2 or more are under attack at the same time. And then I'd like to go over a quick definition of emotion. A conscious mental reaction would be the definition of emotion. So what this is anything that causes an emotional response in you. So it could be seeing the sunshine first thing in the morning, or walking through a flower garden, or it could be the fact that you stepped out onto your driveway that morning and noticed your tire was flat. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be something heavy or large or a negative or positive interaction. It could be anything that could cause that mental reaction to the circumstance that's surrounding you. The effects of stress. Some of the effects could be increased acne, headaches, chronic pain, frequent sickness, sleeplessness, decreased energy, change in libido, digestive issues, or appetite changes. These are all things that can happen when we're feeling stressed. Going to burnout, there are 5 stages. The first can be considered the physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. And that's just when you really can't handle it anymore. Okay, you've reached that stage where you need a break and just can't handle it, but you're still within relatively normal operating parameters, meaning that you can still function as you. You're just a little less you than you were when you're not in burnout. If this isn't treated, it can lead to shame and doubt. You could have performance issues that cause you to have some shame or doubt your abilities or your ability to accomplish something. It can also hit you in the personal world where, you start having issues with maybe your significant other or family member or a close colleague. Again, these just escalate. So cynicism and callousness, we can see where this snowballs, which will eventually lead to a feeling of failure, helplessness, and crisis, and that constant feeling of being on the edge. Some of the signs of physical and emotional exhaustion are chronic fatigue, insomnia, forgetfulness, increased illness, loss of appetite, anxiety, and depression. As you can see, this just builds off of what we labeled as signs of stress that can continue to mount when you reach that edge of exhaustion. And on the next slide, you'll see a nice table which has listed, just some of the things we've already discussed, some of the effects of stress and exhaustion that we listed under emotional stress because emotion is the core center that kind of ties everything together. So it hits on that. When you have a headache, you're not feeling the best, you may be short-fused or you may not have a fuse at all. But that is a physiological response to the stress that you're under. Your mood could be anxious, you could be restless, you could have a lack of motivation or focus. Again, these are just ideas. They don't go in any particular order, but they're just things to look for when you're feeling stressed and exhausted. And then, of course, all of that will affect your behavior eventually at some point. None of us are immune to that, as best we try. All right. So now we've definitely described what stress is, or at least we have a common language to speak about it. And now I want to go into my idea. This is the Jade Phillips idea of stress thresholds and how we can use self-care to mitigate some of those stresses. So at the lowest tier, tier 1, which if you look at the nifty little stick figure, shows right about the kneecap area. And what that is that's normal stress. So that's just, things just aren't going right. You came into work to 101 emails. You got the call from your boss that you need to have a meeting later, and you don't know what it's about. Just average, everyday stresses that we deal with. The kids were late for the bus, so you had to drive them in, which made you late for work. Normal stuff, okay? And that's right around the kneecap. And this can generally be alleviated by a few changes in maybe our environment or the way we attack the day. Some of those changes can be like music, aromatherapy, little memes that you like to stick up all over your desk. I'm a big one for that. My desk is generally covered in them. Just little things to give you that 2-second pause, just to be like, okay, you know what? The world's still spinning, life's still going, and we're back to normal, whatever normal is for you. The second tier of stress comes in around the shoulder area. So this is where our first coping mechanisms have not worked. The stresses continue to pile on top of us, and we get up to like the mid-level, okay? And this is where we need to be a little bit more direct with our self-care ideas, okay? At this point, I would definitely say this would be a good time to go get that cup of coffee or to walk down the hallway and have a unrelated conversation with a friend of yours, maybe about something your kid did great in their soccer game, or, just to be able to disassociate for a minute from the things that are stressing you. And we do this all the time. This is a normal routine. It's part of being human. We engage with the people who we know care about us, or we can find somebody that we can go have a disconnected conversation with so that we can just kind of reset the batteries and get us back on track. And I would say tier 2 is where most of us manage everything, but we're heightened in our awareness of the fact that we're stressed. Okay? Tier 3. Tier 3 is what I call the urgent stress level. So this is around the head level on my stick figure, right about the ear level to where, you ever heard your mom say, I've had it up to here with you? Yeah, kind of one of those things. Yep. It's where you really want to reach out to what I would consider maybe your favorite 5 or, a good group of confidants that you can talk to, that you can break away with. This is where those techniques for respectful ways to disengage, which we'll cover later, really come into play because you need to disengage from the situation. You need a chance to get away, to reset, to recharge. Maybe it's time to take a mental health break and, take the afternoon off, come back and make up those hours at some other time or work out however that needs to happen. But planning to go forward is that you want to engineer something that will allow you to reset so that you can re-engage back into whatever you're working on. None of these methods that I'm going to cover today is a fix-all or a carte blanche to get away from whatever's stressing you. These are all methods to help you reset, rebalance, and re-engage. And the last tier is what I appropriately labeled disengage. Okay, this is the point to where maybe professional assistance is necessary. Maybe seeing Dr. Jody McGrath or going up and seeing Chuck would be the right answer here because you need some form of advice or counsel that is above anything you can get from your peer group or anything that you can do with your environmental changes. And this is where, if it's left untreated, real problems can start happening. So if we stay in the disengaged level for too long, chances are things start to slip, it just snowballs, it gets worse. And, it really, I don't want to say bad things can happen, but really unfortunate things can occur during this stage because we're not aware of maybe how we're interacting with the world around us. So the next slide, which shows the stress thresholds versus self-care, is just a target. This is just again, refreshing the same information that we've been covering, but in a different way, because maybe it'll resonate better than my stick figure will. So if we look at the outer ring of the target, we look at the occasional, optional. This is where we're in that bottom tier, tier 1 of stress. Things are normal. We can deal with these as we always do. And, this is where you want to use your environmentals. You want to reach out to your social network to where you want to go get that cup of coffee, whatever it takes to reset. But a lot of times when we schedule this level of self-care, it's occasional and it's really optimal because it doesn't cost us a lot of money. A lot of us have coffee makers in our room that we've already pitched in to buy the coffee. So it's not costing you anything to do that. A conversation with a friend doesn't cost anything to do. And that's why I call it the optimal, because it doesn't have a lot of consequences to the action, with the exception of the fact that we're taking a small break away from whatever task we're trying to accomplish.
So that's the knee level, right? Knee
Right.
level on the stick figure?
Knee level on the stick figure.
All right, got it.
Absolutely. So then we move to the second tier, which in the bullseye is the yellow. And the yellow is the intermediate. So this is a time when we want to do a little bit more planning. We kind of want to decide maybe Dunkin' Donuts instead of going to the coffee machine that's in the break room. This is a time when we need that step away. So there is a little bit more planning that goes into it, and it can have some fiscal liabilities that go with it. It can have, some other effects on us because we're actually absent from the area where we are working or interacting or, we're just away. So it's deliberate. It's usually a planned activity, and we may incorporate some of the social aspects that we talked about earlier, getting together with peers. And then, of course, the bullseye. The bullseye represents the immediate action. Again, this is where we want to completely disengage. We want to engage in what I call heavy self-care, which is generally can be expensive if we want to go that route. I'm not encouraging anybody to go bankrupt trying to do self-care, but we generally spend a lot more money, like going to the spa, for instance, would be maybe one option here, coupled with maybe talking with somebody on the professional level that can give some really good advice on how to get ourselves back to right. And remember that this process doesn't happen overnight. You know, these little changes may work in the short run, but may not have the long-term results that you want. That's where really getting together with a professional can help you lay out a plan that can last a whole lot longer. Think of these like your quick responses. Okay?
Hey, Jade, I actually have a question about self-care. Because I go to dance class every week. And, that's something I love to do. It's something that I do regularly. And I was just wondering, would that be considered like self-care?
I would actually tell you no. And the reason I would tell you no is because my personal definition of self-care, after doing a little research on it, is that it needs to be a deliberate action that is out of your norm. So going routinely to dance classes, for instance, is a routine that you do. Yes, it helps you reset your batteries, but it doesn't have the same physiological effect as, let's say, going to the salt cave, for instance, which is not part of your routine. And the reason I say that is because when we set out to do something for ourselves that's deliberate, that is specifically for us, like that one little chance we get to be selfish, it really releases the happy juices in our brain that makes us feel good, because it's like, hey, I'm doing this for me. You know, I don't care about the rest of the world right now. This is for me. And then once we accomplish that, we get a second hit. So it's a double whammy of, those really good feelings that we get after a sense of accomplishment, that we set a short goal, we met the short goal, we feel good about that. And that's kind of what picks us up out of the doldrums that we're in. And that's why, not that I'm trying to discourage anybody's normal routines or activities or anything that you do to take care of yourself. It's still self-care, but the self-care I'm talking about is when you recognize that you are a little overstressed, that you're beyond your point to cope with it on a regular basis, and that you realize you need to interject something that breaks the cycle.
Right.
Okay, so that you're not getting stressed because, oh crap, I didn't get dinner done on time. That's going to put me 5 minutes behind getting to my dance class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you can see where this...
Yeah, that definitely does happen to me.
You can build that stress up.
Yes.
So by doing this deliberate action of, like, let's say, going to the salt caves, or maybe going to a professional stylist to have your hair done instead of taking care of it yourself, gives you that little extra pamper time for me, and just, allows you to feel good about self again. Okay. And that's really what we're kind of getting at here, is these things can be as random as sitting down with a book and a glass of wine just to relax at the end of the day. Okay, out of the routine, not something you do on a regular basis, but just your way of recentering yourself. Or maybe it's quiet meditation, another really great tool that you have available to you. And anybody listening, if you need help with this, we'll be glad to help you out, is journaling. Journaling is awesome. Yeah. So I know it may sound a little silly to some to actually physically write exactly what you're feeling, cuss words and all, out on a piece of paper. But the ability to write them out, to visualize what you've written, and then to acknowledge how you're feeling actually has a positive effect on the way you see the world around you. And by doing that, you also have something, hard copy, that you can take to a professional to say, hey, look, I've been struggling with this, and here's my journal. And they can maybe see through your writings, and you're talking about how you're feeling about certain situations, and maybe able to come up with advice and help to help guide you out of those. Yeah. Okay, so you don't get stuck in that spiral.
And just to anyone who is currently listening, it's December 2019, and at present, we do have some blank journals or notebooks that you could come to family programs and grab yourself a notebook or a journal and use those for what Jade's been talking about.
All right. The next topic I want to discuss are respectful ways to disengage. We've all developed a way that we deal with uncomfortable situations and dealing with people that we may not like to deal with. However, there is a proper and respectful way of dealing with that situation, especially when we're stressed. And sometimes taking those 2 seconds to back up and really say, okay, I'm not at my A game. I need to back away from this, but I need to do it in a way that doesn't offend the person that I'm talking to, because that's just going to make matters worse. So, some of the advice that I'd like to give out is remain calm. Even though in your mind you're not calm, you're nowhere near it, a monsoon's going on, you don't want to project that. So remain calm. And that also shows respect for the other individual, because they're not to blame for your current situation. Or they might be, but you don't want to heap that guilt onto them for that. So remain calm. Remain respectful. Remember that in most organizations, whether it's secular or whether it is, within the military, there are customs and courtesies that are expected of us. We're expected to address our managers in a certain way, or we're expected to give the respect that's due the rank of the individual that we were dealing with, whether they're superior or subordinate. There's a proper way to deal with people. So please remain respectful. Remember that it can wait. Unless it's life or death, it can wait. And sometimes the it can wait can be, I can't deal with this right now, but my colleague would be more than happy to help you with this. Or I have another contact for you if you need immediate action. Or you can send me an email detailing, the grievance or the issue that needs to be dealt with, but I personally cannot handle it right now. Okay, so it's okay to say that, and that is establishing your own personal boundary too, which is a way of self-respect. Very respectfully letting them know that I do care, I will take care of this, I just can't do it right now. All right. And that leads into the second part, which I've already touched on, the hand it off. Find that other person that is more than capable of addressing their particular situation and can reach a really good resolution. It may not be able to be solved immediately. It may actually take your input in order to get it done, but they can get the ball rolling for you and get the basic information. All right. And then lastly, plan to re-engage. So when you're disengaging with that individual or individuals, depending on the circumstances, let them know that you fully intend to come back and revisit this, that this is just a temporary fix. I just need to step away for right now. Okay? So let's talk about the good stuff. So some of the effects of engaging in self-care, as we mentioned before, it makes us feel good. It makes us feel accomplished. So it helps us to find our inner peace. By taking these actions of respecting others and respecting ourselves and loving ourselves enough to say, hey, look, I need a break, and stepping away, we're helping ourselves. We're taking that first step into kind of finding our inner peace and what makes us feel good about living again. And the second thing it does is it helps us really self-evaluate and realize what parts do we own, what parts on us. It's really easy and it's quick. We all do it. Point the finger externally, at somebody else. Well, it's their fault. And even though you could be justifiably correct that their actions caused this extra stress to mount on top of you, by it stressing you out, you have actually taken some ownership of it. So being able to honestly look and establish where the things are that you own, and then figuring out a way to deal with your part can help alleviate some of that and maybe even dismantle the situation in and of itself. Learning to have that assertive communication with that other individual after some thought and some reflection really helps out in an area, especially when it might result in conflict or when it might result in tension. So take some time to do that while you're doing your self-care. Just sit and think and just do some introspective work. All right. So some suggestions I have for self-care. So there's personal self-care, like I said, which is deliberate action for yourself. Could be simple as painting your nails or, spending time with your kids. Remember, these are random acts, not things you do on a regular basis. So it could be going out with your best friend that you haven't seen in a while, reconnecting with a family member that you've been meaning to but you've been putting off, sitting down, reading a quiet book, journaling, drinking a nice cup of specialty coffee, for instance, for those of us who love coffee. You know, it's just out of the ordinary. But again, it makes us feel good. As I mentioned, occasionally meeting with friends. Do a family outing. Take a small vacation, you know. If you've got a weekend free and you've got a family camp or lodge or something like that, maybe it's time to go up there, dust it out, and spend the weekend just with your family. Unplug. Hey, there's an idea.
Go to laser tag.
Laser tag
Just
works.
shoot each other
There you go.
in the laser tag.
Not that I'm condoning shooting each other, but it does work. One method I do is I get on with a group of friends and play Xbox. You know, it's just a way for us to have a method of just getting together as a group of friends, spending that time talking to each other about just life in general, and having an activity that keeps us kind of focused on what we're doing. Developing a plan. So, as we all know, best laid plans are great on paper. They don't always work in action or production. So, remember to be flexible with your plan. So, don't pick something that is unattainable or hard or forces too much out of your personal inventory of assets. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure that you're flexible. Have a couple of options. You know, if the movie that you want to see isn't playing at the time that you have available to go see it, have some plan B and plan C. Like, we're already here in the shopping plaza, so there's maybe some shops we can go look at. Maybe there's a restaurant we can go eat at, or maybe just walking around the park is enough. You know, so don't get discouraged if plan A doesn't quite pan out. You know, have some backups. Be honest. Be honest with yourself. Can you afford what you want to do? You know, and what effect is that going to have if it's going to cost something? You know, what effect is that going to have on your family budget or your personal budget, or what is that time going to equate to away from work? You know, so you really need to pay attention to these aspects because you don't want to increase your stress level. You want to decrease it. That's the whole point of self-care. Be realistic. Look for things that are easily attainable, that are within your grasp, and, you know, that aren't far-reaching. You know, be realistic to yourself in your current situation. Be deliberate. So these actions need to be deliberate, and they need to be intended for you and for your self-betterment. This is all part of self-love. So you got to love yourself to do this stuff, and you're allowed to be selfish in self-care. Okay, it's about me. One of the few times. But, you know, you just kind of want to keep that idea going. But you want this to be deliberate. And then practice. I don't mean practice makes perfect. Okay? Practice makes perfect practice. But if you practice self-care on a regular basis, then it develops an attitude towards that. And it allows you to more easily look for those little things throughout your day, those little roses amongst the thorns, that can help pick you back up and put you back on the right. Mm-hmm. To give you one example, I'm a big believer in hunting the good stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, so I start off my day in the morning by actually sending out heartfelt, warm e-hugs, I guess is a good way to put it, to my friends, people I care about, you know, trying to lift them up throughout their day. And I've learned that for me, by doing those little things of sending out those random acts of kindness to people that I care about helps me feel better about me, because I feel like, hey, I've been able to help them start their day off maybe on a better foot. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they'll know that they're not alone and that I'm here for them if they need me, you know, because they have been there for me in the past. Mm-hmm. It's just something I do. It's not, nobody's asked me to do it. It was an idea I came up with on my own, but I would highly suggest it, because any time we do for others, we actually do for ourselves. And that is a very true statement. So that's kind of my way of hunting the good stuff, because sitting down and writing out, you know, the good things throughout the day, I'm not going to remember them all. But if I start out the day on a positive foot, helping somebody else have a better day, then, you know, it makes it a little easier for me to look out maybe at noontime and see what things have gone right. You know, what happened that was actually really good. What was part of my day that, I really want to remember that because that made an impact, and so I want to encourage you to start on the right foot. And so, for me, it's hunt the good stuff. For you, it may be journaling, or it may be that waking up 30 minutes early to have that 10, 15 minutes of just quiet you time, before you start your day. Just whatever you come up with. Hey, a hot shower first thing in the morning does wonders. Mm-hmm. All right. So the last thing I want to leave you with is just a couple of truths. And these are facts. You can take them to the bank. Okay? You are never alone. Nobody in life has ever made it anywhere to where they're going by themselves. We've all seen those commercials about getting your diploma, right? Promoting the state programs that they have for getting your high school diploma, regardless of what your age is. And the message that's sent through that is nobody gets here alone. It takes collaboration with other people to get there. And that it's worth going after that diploma because it will help you later on in life. Same idea here. Self-care is all about you, but it usually requires the interaction of other people. And when we're stressed, usually we reach out. We're social beings. We want to reach out to other people, and there's always somebody there. You may have to look for a little bit to find them, but there's always somebody there, somebody who will listen, somebody who will drop what they're doing and take the time to spend with you. Okay? Remember to reach out, because you may not be being stressed right now, but you may look around your office or your work area or your family, and you may notice that somebody else is stressing. Reach out. Remember, doing for others does for us as well. And maybe those random acts of kindness, of letting them know, hey, your blazer looks amazing today. Love what you did with your hair. Those little things can make such a difference. I'll share a brief story. There was, and I can't remember the name of it, so forgive me for that one. But there was a gentleman who decided that he was going to commit suicide by jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge. He set out that morning with the thought of, if one person will show me that they care, I won't do this. Long story short, there's a whole story on his travel from his apartment to the bus to the bridge. But the key point is, when he got to the bridge and he's standing there amongst the people and the traffic and everything going on and nobody's paying attention to him, one person smiled and made eye contact. The man's still alive today. Notice I didn't say there was a conversation. I didn't say anything was done. It was eye contact and a smile that showed him that somebody cared enough to look his direction, look him straight in the eyes, smile at him, and remind him that he's appreciated just for being human, just for being who he is. That person didn't know him. That wasn't an acquaintance. It wasn't a friend. But it was a random act of kindness that changed that person's life. And we can have that effect on others. So reach out. And then remember, ultimately, you matter. One of the messages I like to send out in a lot of my trainings when I teach suicide awareness is that oftentimes the feelings that get us there is the feeling of despair, of loneliness, and we're focused on the past. And our self-worth is generally down. But remembering that we matter, that we are irreplaceable, that we are precious, that we are fragile, are beautiful thoughts to have, because it helps remind us that, yes, these projects could be accomplished with another body in there, but they won't be accomplished the same way because they don't have my spin on it. And that's what makes us individual. That's what makes us a work of art, is that nobody can replicate your specific brushstrokes on life. And the last thing I want to cover is how to help promote a help-seeking climate. So in all of our workplaces and everything that we do, we want to encourage others to reach out to the resources that are available to them. If you're in the Guard, Marcy's wonderful with Military One Source. You've got your family readiness folks, your FACS. You've also got, the outreach programs, but you also have the chain of command in the armories that you're serving in. You've got your fellow battle buddies that are right there to, believe it or not, help you and get you through because you're a member of a team and you matter. And when all that, if you don't think that's going to work, feel free to stop by my office. It's room 200, right up in GMA. I'd love to sit down and chat with you because we have a whole team there that cares about you individually, regardless of where you come from. So encourage others to reach out to those resources. Encourage and reward help-seeking behavior. So instead of putting somebody down because you feel that they're weak because they asked for help, encourage them. Don't look at them that way, and don't tolerate anybody who does. Because that's the only way we're going to turn this around. When people reach out, they help themselves and they help others by leading the way and showing them how it's done. This is how we get back to right. So it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength and bravery. And to do something publicly like that sends a large message to the people around you. Endorse this attitude from the top down. Get leadership involved in this. Get management involved in this. Get people. Be active. Have a voice. And talk about it. Talk about how, you did just self-care and it made such a difference for you, regardless of if it was just aromatherapy, music, and, the mood lighting in your office. But talk about those things and talk about it often so that people can really look at your life and then look at your actions and then go, wow, it does make a difference. Because somebody may not notice for one instance, but if you make it a pattern and you make it a habit and you're talking about it, they're going to look at you a little bit more closely to see, does this really work? And then if they see that it does, there's buy-in. And then they're going to reach out for those things, And that's including if you're brave enough to talk about, the fact that you went to a therapist and you got help there. Okay, so help-seeking presents itself in so many different ways and should be encouraged. One crucial piece to help-seeking is forgive and forget mistakes. And I really want to talk about this because forgiving is one thing. We can all say, hey, no big deal, or hey, that's okay. But then physically choosing to forget the injustice that we felt because of whatever action was done to us is a little bit harder, but it's crucial in taking care of self. It's crucial to forget, and it is a key piece because if we can forget and we can look at that same person today for who they are standing right in front of us and not who they were yesterday or the day before, it changes the way we interact with them. And so we see them fresh, new, every time. A philosophy that I like to live by is take your lumps today, tomorrow's a new day. And when that day starts, it's a clean slate. It's a chance to get it right. Because yesterday's gone, you can't do anything with it. Tomorrow's not here yet.
And from Anne of Green Gables, I think her teacher, Miss Stacy, used to say, tomorrow's a new day with no mistakes in it. I like to live by that.
Absolutely. And the other thing is to, really assess how you value mistakes. To me, a mistake is like the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different response. It's not a lesson I learned from. What most people around me, and I did too for the longest time, consider a mistake is just an oops. And for me, that's a life lesson. That's a chance for me to get it right. That's okay, I didn't get it right. Let's fix that. Or let's reevaluate. Where did I make the wrong turn? Or where did I do something that wasn't as productive? So that's just another thought I'd like to throw in there. If you do have to reprimand a subordinate, or if you do have to do something, this is continuing to help build that help-seeking climate, do it in private. Don't do it publicly. Public humiliation may be a wonderful tool in some arenas, but it is not generally accepted, and it's not a way to promote a healthy, balanced environment. Deal with them privately. Let them know what your grievances are. Let them express what their grievances are. And be willing to take on what they're talking about and look at it honestly and say, did I have a hand in that? Did I not? By showing that care and compassion for that individual, by first protecting them and respecting them, by engaging in a reprimand in private, taking onus of the parts that we are liable for, shows them that we respect them enough to make a difference. And then you'll generally come out of there with some kind of agreement between the two of you on how we can move forward and progress. Praise in public. We all love to be recognized for the things we do well and the things that we have done well and the projects that we've accomplished or the goals that we've met or the things that we've done for our organizations or for our departments or whatever. We love that kind of stuff. And it really goes a long way to encouraging people who may be struggling to realize that even though you're struggling, you're not ineffective. Even though you're struggling, you you still have value, and you still have the ability to positively influence the things around you. So praise in public. The other thing I would encourage, and this goes along with a lot of what I've been talking about today, protect the hurting. Okay? It doesn't take rocket science or a college degree to look around you and see when somebody's not quite right. Seize that awkward, as they say on those commercials, Engage. Be there. But also, sometimes we're oblivious, when we're around a large team and a group of people and we don't realize that somebody is kind of feeling out. So protect them. Say something. And, it may not always be well received, but, do your best to show them that you care enough to respect them. You may not be the right person to have that conversation, but you can be the right person to step in and say, hey, back off, to the other people and be like, hey, give us 5 minutes, and then deal with the situation as need be. And then the biggest one I would say is, and this is a recent development, but I wanted to mention it, is avoid the battle of the sexes. Okay, there are ways of communicating that are impersonal, that, use the they, thems. I know it gets hard to get used to, but do it. When we enter into conversations and we're not aware of our surroundings and we're not aware of who we're dealing with, we can inadvertently set the conversation off on the wrong path by saying the wrong simple words that to us seem normal. It is not an obligation of anybody to identify themselves to you. You don't have the right to have them self-identify, okay? But you do have to respect them in their lifestyles and whatnot. So using impersonal speech, being very careful with the way that we craft public speaking and the way we dialogue publicly when we're showing something is very, very important, very, very crucial. Try to avoid authoritative statements, top-down statements. Use universal. We're all on the same playing field. And then, use the right pronouns, they, thems. If you do know, use the correct ones. If you're in doubt, go back to the they, thems. And just keep things on an even keel, and you'll find that you'll dissolve most light issues before they even start by doing simple things like that, by just proofreading what you write. Use peer group, to pass around your ideas, your thoughts, your presentations, and whatnots, to get a plethora of ideas on how this could be interpreted or received or, whatnot, before actually producing the product and using it. Okay, so I would just encourage that collaborative effort and allow that groupthink to be able to actually work in a positive way, which is, you put it forward, you want to make sure it's right, and we do it right. And if we keep these good practices in play, we can avoid some of the problems. And this will, again, go back to helping that help-seeking climate, because if somebody feels comfortable in the little thing, chances are they're going to feel comfortable in addressing something that's larger. And thank you so much for your time. Again, my name is Jade Phillips. You can find me at Camp Johnson in the Green Mountain Armory upstairs in room 200.
Thank you so much, Jade. And yeah, that was really informative. I really enjoyed learning about the self-care and realizing that I hadn't been doing it quite right all this time. So it's good to know that I've got things to improve on. We hope you found this content useful and informative. Remember, Kitchen Spoons and Combat Boots holds live webinars on the first Wednesday of every month at noon. You can find the login information on the Vermont Family Programs website at www.ngfamily.vt.gov. Be sure to check back often as we continually add valuable information to build on your personal toolbox. Thanks again, and we'll see you the second time around.